How to write a keynote. The keynote is a special speech. As a cornerstone of an event, these talks tend to be longer than traditional speeches, more entertaining than strictly educational and delivered to large audiences. If you've been asked to deliver a keynote, then this live stream section can help by showing you how to plot out and deliver a lively, impactful presentation that drives your message home. In this live stream section, it is conducted by EIY Public Speaking and Professional Development and Mr. Harry. Harry will spell out how to structure a keynote, craft a compelling story, use emotion to enhance your overall message, and prepare to deliver on the day of the event. Harry is an experienced Toastmaster member, a TEDx speaker, a speaking coach, a poet, and orator. He's also the founder and head facilitator of Articulate Communication Training. Harris is also a very involved in the Namibian Public Speaking community as an Exco member of the Professional Speakers Association of Namibia, an Exco member of Seagulls, Toastmasters, and is a public speaking coach, trainer, and mentor. Before officially taking the public speaking route, Harry found himself on a wide range of platforms which helped to recognize him patterns and principles for effective audience engagement. He has been a radio talk show host, panelist on a variety TV and radio shows, facilitator, master of ceremonies, voice-over artist, spoken word, rap music, and so on. Along with other achievements, he is also the national champion in Toastmasters Humorous Speech Champion in 2016. Hello, Harry. Welcome to the show. Harry, you are muted.
Sorry about that. I was saying thank you very much. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's our pleasure as well to welcome you on a Saturday night. Harry, what is the keynote?
Well, basically, a keynote is a speech that sets the tone of a particular event or gathering, or it can be the thing that wraps it all together because it depends. Keynotes sometimes happen at different parts of a program. So if it's the beginning, it sets the tone, it sets the pace, it allows people to understand what to expect. And if it's at the end, it ties in, it's supposed to tie in everything neatly from what other speakers had said to some of the events and activities that had a particular purpose in mind. And a keynote brings that all together and makes it memorable for the audience.
So if I understand it correctly, it means that it is longer than a usual presentation, right, Harry?
Definitely. It's because usually, sometimes speeches are kept anywhere between 2.5, 5 minutes to 15, 30. But a keynote it usually takes a longer time because there is a lot more that it has to fulfill than the presentations. Because usually a presentation is it's focused. It's one-minded focus. There's a key takeaway that you need to give. And considering a conference or an event, there'll be multiple or many of those takeaway points from different presentations and exercises. So a keynote helps you bring all those together, to make you see the connection between all of them and how they come together.
I see. It means that maybe you need to prepare for such a long time in order to wrap a keynote, right? Because it takes longer time. So what makes a successful keynote, Harry?
I like to say keep it real with your audience, or keep it real for your audience. Real being the acronym, so that's R, you have to be relevant. And E, you have to be engaging. A, authentic, and L, illuminating. So relevant means that you can't just write a brilliant speech and it has nothing to do with what was going on at the event, then
Yeah.
it's not relevant. And you can have very important things to say, but if you're not engaging the audience, they'll miss everything completely. You have to be
Mm,
authentic.
mm,
Audiences on a conscious or a subconscious level can actually tell whether you believe what you're talking about, whether you believe in what you're saying. So if you're
yeah.
not authentic, you're not going to be able to sell it. And finally, illuminating means shedding light. Even, I
Mm,
mean, there's nothing new under the sun, but
yeah.
there are different perspectives that you could offer that make people see something in a different light, or bring about
Mm,
an understanding of something from a different angle, or that was foreign to them in the first place. So I would
mm.
say if you have those points, you are well on the way to writing a very successful keynote.
Yeah, we understand what makes a successful keynote already. Now, can you share with us how can we make a keynote relevant, engaging, authentic, and illuminating to your audience?
All right. So to the audience, again, I'll use the same acronym. Keep it
Yeah.
real with the audience. So, um, sorry, I talked about keeping it real with the audience. Now you also have to keep it real with the event. Again, same
Mm,
acronym. And again, because we're talking about relevance, engagement, authenticity, and illumination, when you're talking about the event, you need to understand the purpose of the organizer.
mm,
So the organizer has called you in to give a keynote, as we explained before, is to wrap up the event, is to put everything in context.
mm,
So understanding the purpose is key. Again, it would be pointless if I don't understand the purpose or the intentions. And then you also have to, in terms of being engaging, you have to know as a speaker, um, you know, uh, you have to know what the other speakers are going to be talking about, and what all the other events are going to be surrounding the presentation. So there could be workshops, there could be breakaway rooms, there could be team
mm,
building activities. So many different things can happen. And to
mm,
bring it all together, you need to know what is going on so that
mm,
you find a neat way to weave them all together, to bring that thread that ties everything and brings it together.
mm,
Also, you have to borrow, and this is in terms of being authentic, you have to borrow from your own life experiences.
mm,
So, regardless of what the topic is, you can't be authentic if you can't relate to it. And even if it seems outlandish or something you haven't experienced, there's still a way to do it. I'll just give a very quick example. As you can see, I have no hair on my head.
yeah.
And I was asked to be a speaker at a hair and beauty expo. So the first thing I thought is, what on earth are you doing calling me? Because I don't really care about my hair. I just shave it off and I just put on my clothes. I don't dress up. So
Mm,
how am I going to fit in? But then I could borrow from life experiences that would help me relate to their audience as well as
mm,
fulfill the theme or their intention for inviting me. And finally, you also, the illuminating part, again with the event, offering those new insights or a new perspective around the topic that enables it to be an enriching experience. Because there's
mm,
nothing better than people saying, huh, I never saw it that way. Because it's expanded their horizon, it's broadened their point of view. And if that has been achieved, then I believe your keynote has done its job.
mm. That is very beneficial, Harry. Let me summarize it. Relevance means that you understand the purpose of your organizers, right? Make sure
Yes.
that the topic you chose is relevant to the organizing team. The second one is you may want to understand what are other speakers' topics so that you can tailor your own topic and make it different and unique to your own self.
Yeah.
The third point, being authentic, means that you can borrow your own life's experience. I think that to some people, even though they don't have the background toward that topic, but they can use their own personal example in order to gain credibility in your in your audience. And finally, illuminating means that showing your own way. Uh, do I understand you correctly?
Yes, definitely, definitely. So
Mm,
that's, if you have those elements, and again, it's just an acronym that I use, the real, but it's not limited to that. There are so many
yeah,
factors. So, but this is what works for me, and I believe also helps you keep on track with fulfilling the purpose of the keynote.
I see. Harry, now let's come to the next point, that is, how can we prepare for a keynote? What are the steps to develop a keynote?
I would say number one, you
Mm,
have, okay, again, so you know your topics, you
yeah.
understand the, you've kept it real, let's say it that way. So
Mm,
you've done your relevance, you've done your engagement, you've thought about
mm,
being authentic as well as illuminating. Now you have to think of the structure of the keynote, and it's as simple as thinking of the same way that we were taught how to write essays. You have your introduction, and you
mm,
have your arguments or your points, and you don't want to make them too many,
yeah.
as long as they, fulfill the goal of all the other points of keeping it real. So you
Mm,
have your point number one, your point number two, point number three, and finally your conclusion. In your introduction, there are a couple of things that you might have to consider. You, as a
mm,
keynote, might not be a known keynote speaker to the audience. If that is the case, you have to grab them and hook them by a couple of, using a couple of tools. Number one, let them understand, why on earth do they have to listen to you in the first place? Who
mm,
are you anyway? So
yeah.
that might mean giving a little bit of an introduction or an interesting
Mm,
story or background as to how you got to where you are and why you're
yeah.
the right person for this particular topic, or the right
Mm,
person to give a keynote in this particular instance. Also, you also mentally prepare the people for what they're about to receive. So whether
mm,
it is the introductory keynote or the keynote that anchors the whole event, regardless, you let them know what it is that you're going to present so that they're mentally prepared. And in that, you can also create a little bit of suspense, a little bit of mystery, so that
mm,
they want to hear what the ending is.
yeah.
So that would be your introduction. And then when you move into your points, your arguments, or the information you want to share,
Mm,
you also have to understand the purpose of that information, which ties into understanding the whole purpose and general theme of the event. When you
mm,
know what that is, you can put it in a form that is easily understood, and then you can support it by either using facts, either using a personal experience. You can
mm,
use it by supporting statistics, or
mm,
even rhetorical questions that your audience would be able to relate to. So that so when you've made that point and you use those examples or any one of those tools, people get to have that mental note and remember, okay,
mm,
that was point number one. And the same happens for point number two and number three. As, as speakers, we should
yeah.
keep it short because they can only take away so much.
Mm,
And so the same thing with your two and three. And when you're concluding,
mm,
find a way to tie all of those points up, bring in the theme of the event, and finally, also, one of the things that you have to do is remember that when you're moving from these one point to another, they're not
mm,
just separate points. You
yeah.
also
Transition.
have to, exactly, you have to take into consideration, how are you going to do your transition from your intro to your first point, from your first point to your
Mm,
second point, as well as your third and your conclusion,
yeah.
because your transition also allows your audience to follow you.
Mm,
They see that, okay, we're about to change gears, or we're now about to move to another point, or this,
mm,
that, and the third. Because you don't want to lose people along the way on your journey. You want them all to come with you, so that when you get to that illuminating place, that vantage point, that new point of view, they all say, aha, I've never seen it from this angle before, and
Mm.
therefore fulfilling the purpose of your keynote.
I see, Harry. Harry, because we have introduction, body, and conclusion in your speech, do you think that we should start with the introduction whenever you prepare for a keynote, or should we start in order like that, or what should we do first?
Ah,
To prepare for that, because I see that
it,
some people struggling to write out the introduction.
yeah,
Yeah,
I would. It varies from person to person,
yeah,
but I would say for what's really easy for me is
mm,
when I am told what the point is and what I
mm,
want to drive home,
yeah,
I start with the end.
mm,
Starting with the end in mind keeps me in line with who I'm talking to and
yeah,
why I'm talking. So that takes into account my audience as well as
mm,
the event, just to make sure that I do fulfill the purpose and I don't just say
mm,
beautiful things and people think, wow, what an amazing speech, and then still have to ask the question, but what does that have to do with
mm,
our event or conference or gala? And so keeping those two in mind, you are able to craft your conclusion, your point, your ending. This is the takeaway, because there always has to be a takeaway in
mm,
form of some points to remember as well as an action point. Because it's all good
mm,
and well to listen to something and say thank you and good night, and people walk away not feeling fuzzy inside, but not knowing what to do, not understanding
mm,
what first steps to take. So giving them a call to action. This is, depending on what the theme is, then you can also do your call to action and things like that. And then based on that conclusion, then you can say, how do I persuade them? Or how do
mm,
I add validity to these things? So maybe
mm,
point one, I will talk about this. What example can I use? What statistics can I use? What personal experience can I share that lets
mm,
them know that had I not done this, things wouldn't have worked out? Or had I done that, things could have, things are now much better. And the same
mm,
thing with the other points in your body. So as you work backwards, yes, you're able to be roped in and kept anchored as to what the point of your keynote is. So once you're done with all of that, you take a look and say, great, now I've got this wonderful information. How do I
mm,
make sure they listen? Is it by reinforcing your authority? I am a doctor who studied 20 years on this topic and I've
mm,
researched. Or is it by your experience? Is it by what you've
mm,
studied, who you are, and how you've come to be an expert in the topic? And you can throw that into your introduction. So that's how I'll do it. Start with the end, work backwards, and then that way you're sure to stick to that narrow lane that you have to balance in delivering your
mm.
keynote.
Yeah. Harry, please correct me if I'm wrong. I have 3 points in your sharing. The first point is that you said that your key takeaway is it your message. Now, that's the first question. And the second question is that you said, let me remember the second point. You said that try to emphasize your key point.
Mhm.
Emphasize
Yes.
your key point. In a
Yes.
long presentation like that, do you think that we should only have one key point in order to help your audience remember, or should we involve other points as well in that keynote? So those are two questions that I would like to clarify a bit.
Okay. I think I'll just try and sum it all into one and
Yeah.
say, depending on your ability to
Mm,
on what you can give your audience. So if the whole event, conference, or whatever it is where you're delivering a keynote, if you're able to tie everything together by giving
mm,
one solid point, do it
mm,
that way. The fewer points, the better. But if
mm,
some of them are, yes, they are related, but they're not necessarily summed into one point, you can make them into links. So one
mm,
links to the other. And so you can have three, four, but as long
mm,
as you make them memorable, as long as you make them
mm,
simple, and as long as your audience can walk away knowing
mm,
what to do about them or what they have to change about their lives or their habits and so on, and
mm,
that the organizers will be satisfied knowing that, great, this is what we wanted our conference or event
mm,
to achieve, and this keynote has made it very clear.
mm.
So it varies. and the fewer the better.
Yeah. So the best case is that you just only have one point, and then you just focus the entire keynote in that key point, right?
Yes, and also, but here's the thing: I'm not saying that in your body you should only have a point. You can
Mm,
have multiple, but they all speak to one point that you're
mm,
going to put together in your conclusion. So you
mm,
could use four different sub points, if I can call it that,
yeah,
subsets of
subpoints.
the main key point. And
Mm,
one you can use stats and figures. Another one you
mm,
can use a personal example, and another one you can use a testimonial, and another you
yeah,
could just give logic, a cause and effect argument because of this
mm,
and that also speaks to all of these points. And because we take all of these, and all these points have shown that,
mm,
let's say if it's about a lifestyle conference or
mm,
seminar or something, all of these show that your lifestyle does count to, how you live your life will lead to, more happiness, better
mm.
health, and so on and so forth. Therefore, take, step one, two, and three, and let's all go out and live a happier life and a
Mm,
healthier one. Just as
I see.
a quick example, yeah.
Yeah, that's clear now. Since the keynote is a very long presentation, it may last more than 1 hour. In that case, how can speakers remember the points in that keynote? Because to me, there was a time that I delivered a keynote and it took me hours in order to practice and mastering that
Right.
key to make
Yeah.
sure that people remember. Because while you are presenting and people perceive you as a high level speaker, then if we're not able to remember the next point, it is the time that we're gonna lose our face a lot. So based
Right.
on your
Right.
experience, what do you think that we should do in that case?
There are certain things that you can use.
Mm,
Sometimes there are monitors in front of you, so it also depends on what you have at your disposal in terms of the venue. So if you have a lectern, you can have some notes on a card just to remind you.
mm,
You can have someone sit front and center in the audience and show you
mm,
flashcards. There's so many things to do. But if you're
uh,
going at it alone, one of the
mm,
things that I would say works is summary notes. Don't have the whole speech written out, but just your summary notes.
mm,
Again, with the key points, that way you don't get lost very easily. Number
mm,
two, you could use visual aids and props. So if you have a table with hats on there and you're talking
mm,
about the different hats people wear in their home, and I can put
mm,
on a hard hat and say, my family life, I'm the maintenance worker. I fix the things that are broken. And I take another hat and I put on, I don't know, a chef
mm,
hat and say, I'm, in my capacity as, so that those visual aids will help the audience understand what you're saying. It will animate it, bring the presentation to life, and also they'll help you remember what is it I have to say about that hat. So so things like that. So that's visual aids
mm,
and props. Um, Preliminary presentations. If you have platforms like you're a member of Toastmasters or a speakers
mm,
association, test drive your speech, get an audience, do it over and over again. One thing that people don't realize about brilliant keynotes is they were not delivered for the first time. They
mm,
have been delivered multiple times and tweaked to suit the occasion. So continually presenting it until you're ready. And finally, practice, 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 and more practice. There's nothing
mm,
that beats that. Not so that you can remember it, but so that you can internalize it. There's a
mm,
difference between having it in here and having it in, it as part of you. And so when you present it, you really embody what you're saying. You're really
mm.
into what you're saying and not into, let me this word up and forget what I was going to say next. So, that way you just keep it moving. You've internalized it as part of you.
I see. It's just like that it becomes your it comes into your subconscious level already. That's the right time.
Exactly. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome, Harry. Harry, let me summarize this point. It means that if you are a solo presenter on that day, you might want to rely on visual aid or maybe slide in order to remember the long presentation, right?
Right.
And
It
yeah,
it will
I
help
see.
you keep that order. Or if
Mm,
you're going to use props, like I mentioned, hats, or it can even be jackets, or whatever
mm,
way you can make it creative.
I see. Got you. Now, after our keynote delivery, sometimes your audience gonna ask you a lot of questions. And do you have any tips to handle questions from your audience in case that some questions you're not sure? And how can you handle those situations?
Well, you I would say, not without elaborating too much. Number one,
Yeah.
the very first thing you have to do when addressing questions is you have to listen. Don't just hear, listen.
Mm,
Because
mm,
sometimes people may be asking one thing, but they're really looking for something else. So if you
yeah.
have if you have that ability, that skill, that wonderful
Mm,
communication skill of listening, you'll be
yeah.
able to get what it is that they're really trying to grasp from from your answer. So listen. Number two, understand. Look at the
Mm,
context. Who is asking the question? From what point of view are they coming? Because
mm,
someone can ask, what's the meaning of life? Now, if it's coming from a preschool child or a single mother, or if it's
mm,
from a philosophy student, all of these answers are different, but the words are the same in the question. So
mm,
look at who's asking and understand where they're coming from in order to address it. And when when you're stuck for an answer, be
mm,
honest. Be honest. Allow yourself to say, right now I can't really get into that. I might have to think on it a bit, but I'm willing to stay behind, and we could
mm,
have a prolonged chat. Because sometimes in your
mm.
Q&A, one question could lead to a discussion that would be
Yeah,
another 30 minutes. So it's
right.
good to know that, so you can say, listen, this will take a while, but I will leave you
Mm,
with this. And if you wanted to discuss it further, we can engage afterwards, or, Google, or
mm,
look at my website or something. And
yeah.
finally, engage. Always
Mm,
engage, because your keynote, your presentation, every time you're doing public speaking, it's not about you, the speaker. It's about your audience. It's about that you, the you in front of you, the the people that you want to give something. It's about giving. So
yeah.
always engage. Find a way to engage their imagination and let them understand what it is you're trying to say.
Yeah, I found one point interesting, Harry, in what you just said. Like, how can you practice your listening skill up to the level that you can understand the implication behind what people said, so that you
I,
can answer to
right.
the spot?
It does take a lot of practice. One of the ways, and I've seen you doing this as well. So you would listen, and
Yeah,
then you would repeat either the
yeah,
points, or the things said, and asking, is do I have that clear? So
mm,
again, when people are doing the question and answer,
mm,
the great keynote speakers, I have seen them do that. They would rephrase the question and give it
mm,
back to them and say, so is that what you're asking? And if
mm,
they say yes, great, we're on the same page. If they say
yeah,
no, then you can ask some probing questions to see
mm,
how to steer it into the direction that they were hoping to go.
mm.
And as time goes, you'll find,
Oh,
especially if
mm,
you are an expert in a particular field. They may vary in certain aspects, but generally your target audience,
mm.
they some of the questions will be repeated. You'd have heard it a million times on the other delivery, or other times you delivered your keynote. So by the time you're doing it here, you already have a nice, short, concise, and informative answer for them.
Okay, so make sure that whenever you listen to someone, you might want to clarify and confirm you understand toward mm, that person, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, see Harry. Harry, seems that we only have 1 more minute left to finish our live stream session tonight. That is really fast. Do you have final
yeah.
message to share with our viewers here toward the topic keynote?
If number one, remember to keep it real,
Yeah.
relevant, engaging, authentic, and illuminating. So you always want to, do that both for your audience and for the
Yeah.
organizers. And a final thing I'd like to leave you with as well is, as a speaker, if you're given the privilege to do a keynote, embody what you're going to say. Don't practice so that you memorize words and the phrases the way you wrote them down, but rather so that it is a part of you. And that will help with being real and also really engaging in real time with your audience and be in the moment, because again, you want your audience to engage and relate with you. So if you're talking about something sad, engage in it, embody it, and don't without even having to let emotions take over from you. But if you embody it, your audience picks it up, and all of those things, you've dragged them in. It's like watching a good movie. You laugh, you cry, you you shed a tear, you cheer, you get excited or disappointed, and it's the same thing with the keynote. Take them on a journey, and I think that's where I'll leave it for now.
Yeah, being real becomes your reputation or your brand for tonight. So we understand your, and we remember real. You are very real.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you, Harry, and thank you, our audience, for watching EIY education session on Saturday night. And we hope to see you again next Saturday night at 8 to until 8:30. And thank you so much, Harry. That is our pleasure to have you here tonight for those valuable insight of Keynote. And hello, everyone. My name is Langan. I'm a founder of EIY Public Speaking, and see you next week. Bye bye.
Have a good evening.